you think it'll be loud enough?
We're tilling happy.
Yeah.
Oh, happy.
It's the last one.
Well, he was informative.
And we're recording.
He was in a lot of things, though.
Okay,
Yeah,
everybody,
we have a lot of
welcome
things.
to Memories of the Bartlett Public Library, Pages of the Past. Library celebrating 50 years this year, it's kind of amazing. What I thought we could share tonight is stories such as your earliest memories of going to the library, your favorite librarian. I still remember Don Larry really helping me with my kids when they were in high school. Favorite books maybe as a child or for one of your kids. Story times, programs, memorable events. For instance, the library started out in Village Hall, then was on Railroad Avenue, and then moved here in 1988. Something like that, I get it mixed up. Anyways, we're very happy that you were joining us, and I'd like to hear some of your memories. Okay, who would like to go first?
Well, I probably have the earliest memory because 50 years ago, when they first started, I was a volunteer at the library when it was in the Village Hall. And I had a little kid who's in her 50s now. It would be coloring on the floor. And one thing I really remember is the one lady rode her bike, came in and got a book, and I stamped her card. This was the old days. And she rode her bike off, and one person, that was all, my whole shift that came in. I mean, it wasn't popular, it didn't have mom and tots anything, you know, it was just a plain old library. But it had lots of books, and yeah, it was in the Village Hall. So that was 50 years ago, because I've been in Bartlett 51 years, and that kid was two and a half or 3. When she colored on the floor, you know, had her crayons and stuff, and I figured, gee, I had so much extra time, what else can I do? I thought I was president of Bartlett Women's Club, but I don't know if that's how I got involved in that. You know, that was a long, long time ago. So that's my story.
Thank you, Laura.
Where was that? I don't remember the being in the Village Hall. I remember the Village Hall.
The
It
south
was
wing.
a building.
It was off the side, they had stairs going up separate, and it's all, if you look at it, sometimes you can see the, where they blocked it up again. But it used to be like, on the other side where you come in now, it was on the other side. They had an opening, and that was the library, and they had stairs going up.
Was it outdoor entrance?
Yeah, they had stairs going up.
South wing of the
side.
Village Hall and the north wing was the police department.
I remember when it was Village Hall, but I don't remember the library. When did the other library, when did that close?
I don't know.
When did the library open by Railroad Avenue?
I know, we should know this.
Got a tough question.
1981. I don't know, I'm guessing.
And the post office was on the other side.
Yeah, I remember that.
They were together.
Yeah.
The library was there and the post office was there. Yeah. I don't know how long it was in the Village Hall, but it was 50 years ago. That's when it started in the Village Hall, the library.
How many volumes do you think we had? Because we probably had a lot of space.
Well, it was a big room in those days, you know, if we didn't have the action that we had now. You know, if one person came in my whole shift, you know.
Which was how many hours, huh?
Well, it was probably 4 or 5 hours, you know. Yeah.
Plus they were using the encyclopedia.
Yes. Yes, we didn't have computers, you know, there were no phones, you know.
Card catalog?
Yeah, the card catalog, yeah, we had to know how to do that. Yeah, I don't remember anybody training me or anything. It was just like, oh, I'll sign up for the library, have some time, you know. So, yeah, that's how it all started. And I don't remember if we had a librarian then, you know.
A lot of volunteers.
Yeah. It's in the Village Hall.
Well, you know, on that video that the library has on the website, one of the first images is of the volunteer library. Ruth Beckner sitting on the table.
Probably Dorothy DeRuth.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Phyllis,
Yeah.
I think, was in that picture.
Yes. Anyways, that was very interesting.
Yeah. Where is that at? Is it video?
I sent an email out and I copied a link. So you just click on a link and it's a 15-minute video the library's going to show on their
You can
monitors
also
here.
get it just like on the YouTube, put in Bartlett Library.
Yeah.
Whole slideshow through the years.
Yeah, it's really a slideshow.
Yes. I'm sorry, right, this slide is not a video. Yeah.
Okay, and the interesting thing, the way it got started too, if you go into the village hall today, you see that big picture of the old dilapidated village hall with the water tank behind it. We desperately needed a village hall. Bartlett was small though, and people did not want to pay for a big, expensive village hall. And one of the ways that it got in was the promise that there would be a permanent home for the library if the village hall got built. And so there were a lot of people that were upset when the library had to move because the village hall needed room. Because that was one of the main reasons the village hall got approved in a referendum, was that the library was guaranteed a home. So I can remember my dad going on and on about that one. They raised our taxes in the library and now we don't even get it. They're taking it away from us, kicking them out. So,
I think what taxes were back then, too.
yeah, I distinctly remember that. So, you know, it's, when they moved to the post office building, I mean, it was kind of like a big breather space. But as you were talking about, Phyllis Smead, Dorothy DeRue, and who else? When did Joanne Simmons come on board? She wasn't in the beginning, but she was here for an awful lot of years.
That's right.
I remember her a lot.
Port was on the board.
Who?
Port, she was on the board.
Yes, she was.
Ursula Moe was on the board.
Okay, I didn't know her.
That's the name from the back.
Dorothy DeRue wasn't on the board.
No, but she was one of the big volunteers, and
Oh, yeah.
one of the pushers to get this thing through. And, you know, when we first went in there, I mean, it was quite a spectacular thing, because Bartlett didn't have anything like that. The village hall was like a mansion, you know, and then, same thing, the Historical Society had a room downstairs where we could meet, and then they had to expand things, and we were told that we couldn't meet them anymore. So it was like all of a sudden, all these things that were gonna get a little home in the village hall, whoosh, times have changed. But the library has come a long way, and it's a very respectable place, I think, today.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yes, and in the long run, it is good. I mean, the library is its own district. It's not attached to the village,
Right.
and that's good too,
Yes.
in the long run.
Of course, we've had the lovely Mary Vito here for so long. She's been one of the leading lights of the library for a long time. Main attraction, right? And Kathy Pava, people like this, you know, and Peg,
Kathy was one of our first trustees.
two Pegs.
Yeah.
Well, I have two things about running for the board, and I too have been here 51 years. I was in one election, and I got no votes on the north side of town. And I thought, you know, there are people that don't like me, but everybody in Cook County didn't like me. And Bob Mueller took me down to an old warehouse that Cook County has for storing ballots, and they had to hand feed the ballots.
Wow.
That was pretty interesting. It was pretty unnerving.
Did that change the count?
Pardon?
Did that change the count?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
my.
yeah, but still, it was kind of odd. I can't even remember what the reason, except
Well,
somebody
not the only
put
one.
in a wrong program or,
No.
you know, or something. And when we were in the post office building, there were people that didn't want us to move, who shall remain unnamed, but I've mentioned it before, did not want us to move.
Didn't want you to move from Railroad to our present location?
Well, no, they wanted us to not move from there, and we had tried to buy and give the man, life estate in one of the houses near the library / post office. And they weren't having it, the woman didn't want anything of that, so then we had to figure out something else.
I know there was some skepticism until we got the permanent place here, because people saw how the library had to leave the village hall, and they was like, okay, where are they gonna go next, where they won't get kicked out?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I can remember hearing people talk about that.
Well, I'm sure that was a legitimate concern.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Especially guaranteed for in perpetuity, basically, that they have a place.
Yeah.
And there was some switching of land, as I recall. The library, I think, had the land across from where that, across, behind kind of, it's south of those railroad tracks, whatever those railroad tracks are, south of town, or not south of town, but on the south side. As you come into West Bartlett Road, or not, South Bartlett Road.
It was
there's
the
railroad
IC
tracks.
back then, the
Yeah.
Right.
ICG.
And we had that property, and for some reason, I can't even remember now.
Well, they had, the school district also had property there too, and they swapped it.
Right,
of course,
they
was there-
swapped it,
So
right.
were you close to the school district property?
I believe so, and then we got this property. So that was, it didn't make people that wanted it in Cook County happy, but the population in this area was much bigger.
Well, this is part of the O'Brien Farm,
I was gonna ask that, okay.
and which was significant during the Civil War. Also, there was a Civil War camp here. And by putting the library here, that kind of opened the door to maintain more wide open spaces and have park district. I mean, one thing kind of led to the other to make sure that we didn't get developments in here on this big parcel of land. Because at one time, the village was grabbing up property, like in the Braintree area. They were thinking about the center of town would eventually be out that way. And so a lot of things changed in a hurry. It was just good that the library got this property. As I recall, it wasn't even close on the referendum, because people wanted the library to have a home. They were upset at the village, not at the library.
Wasn't it the property at Struckman and South Bartlett Road where the fire department is, wasn't that supposed to be where the library was gonna be, and they decided that was too far away?
It was a little further north, I mean, it was there, but a little bit north, it wasn't right on the corner.
Okay.
It was just south of the railroad tracks.
May have been some of the Humrock property that's still vacant today. Oh, you said it was north of there. I was not old enough to vote then, so I didn't know these things.
Mary, in your notes that you sent the History Society, you have a note here, 2001 move to Village Hall after suspicious substance scare.
Oh, that
Can
was
you
a fun one.
elaborate on that?
Well, I would just started at the library, so I was
I
part-time.
can tell.
But, and you could probably tell more, because you, yeah, so you go right ahead.
So what happened was, like we have the Friends books out there. Well, along that wall, we had the books originally. So where we now go in. One day someone came in and there was white powder all over one of the shelves. That was right when the
Oh, yeah.
anthrax
Yeah.
scare
Oh.
was in. So immediately, we vacated the library and called the government agencies, and hazmat came in. They literally put plastic over the building and said they took samples and sent it out to Washington DC, and basically said no one could enter until they got the results of those samples, which took about 3 weeks according to my wife.
Wow.
So we were scrambling because how do you serve your patrons? Luckily, there was a vacancy in Bartlett Plaza, I believe.
We were in Village Hall, and everything was moved to Village Hall.
No, Village Hall.
We set up a temporary library
And
in
the
Village
other
Hall.
libraries in the area donated books to us
Yeah.
so we could still serve our patrons.
So what did the powder end up being?
It was just probably talcum or something of that. They said it was not harmful. But again, it just,
We put the
Yeah.
exams.
But it seemed like a
There's a lot of
deliberate
false
prank?
reports.
there was, yeah, and there, there was a lot of that going on at the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
You know, you had people in Congress receiving letters with
Oh,
the
yeah.
white
Right.
powder in it.
Yeah.
So again, it was one of the scarier times we had at the library, and I mean, it looked like literally a scene out of some space movie with these guys in their uniforms and that, and hoses for their hair to come in and all
Sure.
that.
Excuse me, may I ask who you are?
Yeah, I'm Jack Buds. I was a trustee here
About
from
25 years.
'91 to 2015.
Nice to
treasurer for many, many years and vice president and president. So I served for about 24 years here. And after retiring from the banks and all, I was like, okay, we're going to do traveling, so I can't make these meetings every month. So I felt it was my time to depart at that point. But,
Now, Jack, I have to tell you that I heard a different story, I had a different memory of the anthrax scare.
okay.
And it was that something was found upstairs in the food services.
It was, well, it might have been several places, but I think the one that they were concentrating on was here.
More
But again,
public.
that was a long time ago, you might be right. You know, I always defer to my wife.
What year would that have been?
It's 2001,
2001.
in the fall,
So we were here.
yeah,
I remember it in the news, I remember it being in the news.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you hear these things on the news constantly, but I mean, when you're faced with it, you know, you just didn't know. And then the question was, how many patrons had come in contact with it, you know, prior, you know, that day. So, you know, and the staff and everything. So,
Serious matter.
yeah, you have no idea about it. So, and, you know, I've got it since Ed, you have a degree in organic chemistry. Anthrax and was an intelligence. Anthrax is very, very lethal, very quickly spread too. So it's one of those things that when you talk about biological weapons and that's one of the first ones that are deployed because it tends to be very lethal. But yeah, that was a pretty scary time.
I know, I mean, I just started working part-time and that's, oh, now we're in the village hall.
Yeah.
It's quite an interesting time.
Yes.
For years, I've been an election judge for over 40 years, and so we were here at in the old library here. And the funny part was they would use that door for entering and exiting. But there, I don't know if it was a design flaw or what, because that was supposed to be an emergency exit. So they couldn't take the lock off the door.
Right.
It was never intended to access here from outside. So, you know, we had to either put something in there to keep the door from closing, or we would take duct tape and tape the push bar. Well, after a while, from so many people going out, everybody always tried to hit that, and that would come off. So we had one judge, Joan Feigl, who had the idea to put aside wet paint by the bar so that they wouldn't
that's
touch
true.
the push bar. That way they would, and then another one push here, that way they would push the door other than the push bar. And that went on for years.
Wow.
Yeah, that happened when we were doing.
You remember, you would have been here at the time of voting.
Same sort of thing,
Yeah.
we did in this room where we didn't want people to come through the main library
Yeah.
and come through this door. You know, we always had to have it propped open or someone sitting out there.
Right, because it wouldn't unlock.
Yeah.
There's a special brick out there, it's still there. For property, no.
Yeah, but sometimes you'd have an election this time of year when it was like in the 30s, you couldn't leave the door open.
Well, one of the other things when you talk about design flaws, okay, one of the things we really struggled with a lot, especially in the winter time, is when those doors open and someone is using that one, the draft that comes through here
Yeah,
can
yeah.
be pretty vicious.
Pretty brutal, yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Stacy, I want to ask you, because you said you had some memories. You will repeat them, you might have said something earlier, but you wouldn't mind repeating.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything different than what they said. I just remember being a kid and going to the one downtown by River Avenue. I don't remember it ever being in the village hall, so that makes it a little before my time.
So you just remember Railroad Avenue?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember it was attached to the post office, you guys said, I think, right?
Do you have one of the little orange cards?
Yeah, oh yeah, I had an orange card with a little metal piece of,
Yep.
Yes.
metal.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that, and I remember they had like a stamp, you know, like a stamp, and you change the date, and
Right.
stamp
Right.
it in the ink, and then they put it in the inside of the pocket.
A
Right.
very manual process.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember what it looked like in my mind. I can see it perfectly.
Yeah.
I must have been really young, like very like grade school age.
what we did is, the 3 weeks, part of that extension was when we were looking at fines. Okay, I'm sorry, but that was one of the main drivers on that, is my view is that, you know, based on the cost of books were going up, you know, a person who kept it out for a week and a half, and I didn't think it was a dime or a nickel or something back then, you know, we're depriving the people who use it, and, you know, we didn't have the funds to buy a second copy. So what we said is, look, you know, we looked around at what some other libraries were doing, then we extended it to 3 weeks, and said, you know, someone should be able to read a book in 3 weeks. And then we increased the fines to 25 cents at that point. But again, it was, my view was, okay, you want to punish the abusers, but you want to get the people who are using the library correctly every chance, you know, if they needed that extra few days.
Sure.
So, you know, a lot of the finance stuff and that, since I was been in finance for 29 years, you know, a lot of things that we did at this library was based on, you know, we had a bunch of finance kind of guys and gals on the board.
It's
So
curious,
again,
very interesting to hear, because I always felt like, you know, the library's funded by taxes, why do we have to fund the library or depend on our funds?
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
Well,
And
you
most
depended
libraries
on-
now are going fine-free.
yeah.
yeah.
I
You
just was
depended on
curious.
donations in the beginning too, because I
Right.
remember my parents bringing boxes of books. They were soliciting people to donate books to stock the library.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's interesting too.
Engineering
Say that again, I didn't hear.
I donated his engineering library, he was upset, no.
Oh.
Oh, you found out after the fact?
I kept 1 or 2 books that I really liked.
Oh, I do appreciate it.
You can just check them out when you want
They're
Like
pretty
I said,
dated,
a lot
I'm
of
afraid.
storage.
You know, take a look at when the library started, okay, and what a book cost back then, okay? And now, one of the reasons, because you do have the internet, and you can just go on that and pull down many books. So the publisher basically jacked the prices way up. I mean, I look in, you know, some of the books that I do military stuff, you know, it's a paperback and it's costing $19.95, and it's
Yeah.
like, what the heck, that used to be 75 cents, kind of thing. But,
Another story before technology days, going back to being election judges here, the library, of course, closed at 9 o'clock. And what happened to the phones? They were forwarded to an answering machine. And so we were here one time, and we were like the second to the last precinct in DuPage County to report, because we couldn't get the ballots to balance. Well, one of the judges, her name was Margaret from Oak Meadows, had Alzheimer's. And finally, toward the end of the night, she opens her purse out and said, do you think these 2 ballots might help? Or she had 2 ballots. But in the meantime, the DuPage County Sheriff came here to see if we were being held hostage, because they couldn't get a hold of, no cell phones back then. And the landline went to the library's answering machine.
Oh, my God.
She's stealing ballots.
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
So the library has been a dedicated polling place for a long time, but I can tell you stories about what happened here.
So Mike, did you come here when you were a teenager?
Yeah.
I just checking.
Well, and then another time, when they merged polling places, so we had 2 different polling places, and people were confused which way they'd go, and a lot of them, from ours, they'd say, oh, I know him, I vote over there. So I had a dog that was very ill. He was a Pekingese, 16 years old, and he had to be put on IV for antibiotics because he had a kidney and a liver infection. And so this was right before then, and I was real concerned. And so the other polling place, she said, well, bring him here in the library, because there was like a stage. I said, you can't bring the dog in the library. I said, why not? He's sick, he's not gonna bother anyone. So I did. So my dog was here all election day, and he never moved. And one of the librarians comes in and she goes, "Is that real or stuffed?" I said, "No, he's real." She goes, "Oh, that's okay." So I can tell you more than humans were welcome at the library.
Well, I remember when we were doing the ballots, you had to bring them after they were all tallied and that.
Yeah,
We had to bring them either to DuPage or Cook County office.
yeah.
And I was always assigned to do the Page one. And as you know, that area now has lights in it, but back then, there were no lights, so you were really driving in the country to get over
Well,
to
at
that
11:30,
DuPage
they were
office.
concerned about us.
Yeah.
Well, my experience with the library is kind of between my young children with children's books when the library was on Railroad Avenue. And I had to cross the railroad tracks with a stroller. And
Oh,
you
no.
remember what that was like?
Yeah,
It
there's
was
three.
not a good crossing.
Right.
They finally fixed it after my children were old enough to walk by themselves, of course. And then it came here and we continued. And then when I was working on a graduate course at U of I in the city, I could get books through interlibrary loan here. So I could just come here and do my research. And I didn't have to drive all the way into the city. So my experience spans from my young children to my own needs, taking a graduate course. So I was pretty impressed when I was able to do that.
Almost like having a personal internet by today's terms, right?
Yeah, I used that a lot. I get them from around the country in some cases.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things, because I was also a trustee at DuPage Library System, okay? And one of the things we made sure was that when they did the mergers in that the interlibrary system would still be honored everywhere. Because that was a big issue, because one of the things that came up as we were looking at the merger was that the way that the interlibrary system was set up was a library that was underfunded could literally request books that they didn't purchase, which would pull them out of libraries that had those book systems. And the way the law is written is you cannot deny that request. You can hold it if one of your patrons have it, but it kind of goes to the top of the list to get out. So that was one of the things we worked on too. Okay, when they split it to the northern Illinois rails and the southern Illinois system, is okay. Are we still going to be okay with doing this library stuff? And of course, we see the truck all the time here, so we know it's still working.
That was a great innovation. It really was.
Yes.
I think so too.
I mean, it worked for me specifically because I was working on a graduate course, but for any book that you want to get,
Yes.
and if your library is not big enough to own a great range of books,
Yeah.
it's really nice to be able to get them from another library simply by going to your own library.
And the other thing was, especially in this area, back then this would be in the 90s, the libraries kind of had specialized collections. So you didn't have to collect certain books,
Right.
because some of them in the specialized collection were pretty expensive. So you knew you could, get them from Schaumburg, or you can get them from Poplar Creek or that, and vice versa, they should get certain amounts of money.
I've used that service a lot. When we moved here in 2000, I was teaching kindergarten in a private school, and I did it for 17 years. And there were a lot of books that I wanted to have for the students, and the library couldn't provide everything. And so it was really a great way of keeping the kids educated in the books that I really felt were important in their growth. And I can remember too, when you got the iPads a few years ago, one of our sons has 4 boys, and they're very close in age, and it drove me crazy when I had to babysit. And
And so I would bring them over to the library, and the library would get out, let us get all 4 of them going, and they were real quiet when they did it, but I think she kind of rolled her eyes with this group of boys coming in to do Minecraft or whatever on the computer. So that was a big service to us as well. So I guess I see it more from a patron and what you've done with the library. That's been really important with DVDs and all kinds of things that have enhanced our lives and keep us educated at our age.
When I went to Bartlett grade school in the 1960s, and of course, we didn't exist then, right? And we would take a field trip to Bartlett Public Library in Elgin. So we would get library cards as part of the field trip. But because the Village Hall was dedicated May, I can't remember the date, I want to say the 9th of 68. Senator Everett Dirksen did it. But there weren't a lot of libraries around. Gail Borden was about it. I can't think of any others. Probably Schaumburg, but
Probably Schaumburg, yeah.
Was Streamwood?
no,
I don't think so.
no. In Shreveport, Marlene Duell was one of them that started that one. And
Never heard.
I went to school with her daughter Laura.
Oh.
So, but I mean, they had books in somebody's garage. They had a library set up, and then they gradually, became Poplar Creek. Got one by referendum. But usually back then, people didn't like to pay for school referenda, but they did like to do a library referendum. Like, as I said, that was the big selling point to build the big village hall because of the library getting a home.
I didn't know that. That's so interesting. I do.
Well, that happened when we were doing the referendum for the second floor.
Yeah.
We had a consultant, and one of the things, again, because of the financial stuff, I said, my motto when I ever talked to anyone was, understand this is 2 books a year. You went out and bought them yourself to support this referendum.
That was a
And
good point.
when we finished it, the consultant said he had worked on a number of library referendums. A lot of them during that period were defeated. He said we had the biggest margin of success than anyone he worked
I
at.
believe that, yeah.
And I think it was almost over 2 to 1. We had the votes for that second floor.
Wow.
There is something that troubles me. I know that library districts are different from village borders and so forth. I have friends who live on the west side of Bartlett, and they are not within the Bartlett Park District, library district. And I think that's one of the things that makes them feel that they're not part of Bartlett. I think it's one of the things that divides us. We talk about people on the west side, don't even know where the train station is, some of them, and we would like to bring them in. But one of the barriers is the fact that the library it's not their library. They don't get the notices. They don't hear about what's going on at this library unless someone tells them. They don't normally personally receive any of the notices.
The village boundaries, the library boundaries, and the
Park district are all different.
They do not match. They're all
Right,
different.
right.
But,
That
yeah,
doesn't make sense, but,
Like Walnut Hills, they go to Poplar Creek.
right.
Yep.
Yeah, they're not part of it either.
Well, the same thing,
But you know
anyone.
what I always tell them? I say, look, you have the advantages of both libraries, you've got your Gail Borden Library card, great, and you can use it here.
but it's not only that, they don't know the events that occur here.
Unless they go to one.
Well, when a lot of these boundaries were drawn, though, the towns were just little holes in the road.
Yeah.
When I went to grade school, Route 59 people had an Elgin address. It was Route 1 box something.
Still do somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and also, I knew this from my election, okay, is we were asked
That's the
Prior to that.
library.
whether we wanted to incorporate Kane County
But they don't.
in our library district. And we looked at it and said, it's a quarry, why would we want to incorporate it? So we didn't. So when I ran in '91, one of those stories that is in the Tribune, we were in DuPage and we were in Crook. No one running for the library board. There was absolutely, no candidates. And it was that period of time, and I had just finished my Dale Carnegie courses, which were trying to push me to be an extrovert, which I am today. So again, I looked at all the rules and said, okay, I gotta register in Cook, and I gotta register in DuPage. There were 5 people who did write-ins. I actually received the least votes of any of the 5, mainly because in Cook County, the judge ruled that they did not put the term down, the 6-year term. Well, the rules literally stated you only had to do that if there were 2 terms being written, so, we could have challenged that. 2 of the people did not sign up in both counties, and 2, I think, didn't do it in DuPage, 1 didn't do it in Cook. They were disqualified, so the one who had the most votes and me who had the least votes were put in. One said, well, we'll sue, and, I said, well, I don't want to cost the library money, I'll sit down. They said, at that time, no, we want you on the board. But again, it's one of those situations that when you have a cross, all of us would have been disqualified if Kane was there. So it's just there's interesting twist on it. But again, they were going to plan if the suit was, oh, these people were okay, then the library was planning to do a suit on Cook County to say you have to count those votes that you disqualified. So, it would have been a big mess, and you really didn't want to spend the money.
So does the boundary go to like Spitzer Road, Munger Road?
Which boundary?
The west boundary of the library?
West boundary goes to, there's a little bit of Wayne in it, and it goes to,
You gotta look.
I can look on the map, and
The map is kind of crazy.
I know everybody in West Street are not. They're
Right.
okay.
yeah, there's a certain line there, and then you go to that line, and then the Gilmore.
Yep.
And even on the south end, southeast end-ish, the border kind of goes down the middle of a street. One side is Poplar Creek, the other side is Bartlett.
So, if a community organization has an event at this library, they don't care about it, for example.
But on the other hand, like somebody was saying, there's so much more online stuff now.
Yeah, that's really where I get all my information on the library.
Now the examiner always gives information on the library.
And you got projects like the Gutenberg project with the old books are all out there. You can download them. You got Overview? Overdrive, yeah. I get the first letter. Where you can download these things constantly.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So again,
And I can listen to a book on my phone.
Yes,
I don't
right,
like
right.
it.
well, that's why, one of the things they did when they did the tablets, the original tablets, they were book size for that reason. And to turn the page, you flip the page. Because they were thinking, how do you easily transfer someone from a book to a tablet on it, so. Yeah. But again, like I say, a lot of the stuff is, as you look at material, in the library, this is a challenge now, is, like DVDs. How many of those you keep? Because by the time you get the DVD, I can download it on one of the streaming services. But they're fairly expensive. But, eventually we'll just be some kind of, a hub for people to be able to access all that stuff.
It's a way to describe us as a hub.
Yep.
I like the book clubs because you learn about different authors, different titles. You wouldn't have probably gone and then we'll tell you about another author and like, oh, that's a good one. And you start picking up all that information, and sharing it.
And I want to change the was some of your favorite librarians? And I'll start, because it was when my kids were in high school, my boys, amazing boys, and high school boys. But, you know, when they had these research projects, and we were at the library, and Dawn Liardi, I just couldn't get over how she would help you and get you directed this way.
Who?
Dawn Liardi, you know, or any of the librarians, I was like, they would do all this, you know, I just don't, didn't know that, but I did, and it was just so amazing. It was just so, yep, so that was my first, wow.
I think you're the one librarian that I knew knew your name,
Yeah.
you know? I didn't know, you had to come in, get a book, and that's it, but I mean, you were very personable and got to know people, yeah.
When you're dealing with the public, that's what you should be.
Well, right.
And I think that, you know, I have to commend our librarians because most of our staff, not everyone, but most of the staff, were very personable, always going out of their way to help you. And they would bring their talents. I mean, I'm thinking about Amy, you know, all the kids knew her, Miss Amy,
Miss Amy, yeah.
playing the guitar, you know, the sing-alongs.
Yes, it still is.
I know when our grandkids come, you know, we always bring them the story out. And you can tell that who's ever running that is really trying to get that to be a very educational and entertaining session for the children.
Yeah, I think I have trouble naming specific librarians because they've all been so helpful. I've never really run into problems where they wouldn't help me and lead me and do things. So I would have trouble saying, this is my favorite librarian. I've never encountered a problem with any of them not going out of their way beyond what even I expected.
Well, another thing I have to say about our library, if you look around the library system in Illinois, a lot of the people who are running those libraries were librarians here.
Really?
We were considered one of the
Let's see.
best training,
Wooddale has Ron,
okay?
Millstream has Susan,
Amy used to be,
Amy is at Roselle,
so,
Sandy, she worked.
Sandy's Warrenville.
Wow.
Yeah.
you know, that's something,
That's good
you
to know.
know,
We need a plaque somewhere here.
yeah, I mean,
I
and
never thought of it.
Where
that
your
way.
roots in
And
Bartlett.
that was one of the things that, you know, understand, that says that the operating procedures we had here were then spread to other libraries. So you had a group of people that knew they could call someone up at one of these other libraries and say, I got a favor I need to ask you.
Yep.
Yeah, besides our library in Gale Gordon, I don't think there were a lot of libraries for a while.
Poplar Creek.
Upper Creek came soon after us.
Yeah, Schaumburg special.
Well, I was used
Well,
to
St. Charles has
displays.
been there a while.
Yeah.
And now we have little libraries everywhere.
Yes.
Even in front of people's
They're
homes,
wonderful.
they have done a little library.
Yeah.
It's amazing how it's, you know, you certainly wouldn't have found that 50 years ago. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Our son has a little library, you know, that they come and pick books, but there was one lady that would come in and take all the books. And so, my grandsons, they're teenagers, they figured out a way of putting this little light that looks like a camera on. And she hasn't been back.
Could they install one in, the one in front of our Bartlett? Our books go like, I think because they go to two toots when the kids come, and then they don't come back or bring any back, you know, so I'm always,
And then you take one, bring one, take one.
no, they don't do that at my little library now.
Color lights up.
Well, I know you put one up at, Fireman's Park there,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And one time I drove by and it was like, I should have taken a picture because it's the epitome of what that's for. A little boy about 5 years old holding the book and the mom's in there and going through the books, but he's got this book and I thought, you know,
done, Coral by me, this year, and they put one up. It was
I go
wonderful.
by that, it's so cute, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a house, it's not even a business, that's doing it. So, yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Well, and again, a lot of people buy books because they want to read it when they're traveling or something like that. And then what do you do with them?
Yeah.
Similar to our book sales here.
Okay, any other stories, anybody have memories you want to share? Sorry this wasn't what you thought it was going to be.
You did a good job, though. It was interesting.
Yes, it
It
was.
was very, very, to hear
Yeah,
some of
thanks for
the,
everybody that shared.
yeah, the old stories. I wondered where the post office was. The post office was a different location then.
Right across the library, when it was on Railroad Avenue.
Yeah, okay,
You
but
went in and to the right was the library and the left was the post
And it
office.
was one building, one, right, one
Yeah.
side was.
on the north side of Railroad Avenue?
No,
South.
south.
South side.
You know, like the dance location is?
It's right on Hickory,
Oh,
Hickory,
okay.
there's a dance studio and,
Okay,
yeah.
right over there.
Yeah.
The-
And a post office.
I think that was dedicated.
And a church on Sunset.
I remember the pharmacy.
And then it was the pharmacy after that,
Was it the
yes.
same building as the pharmacy?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So it was a church.
It was a church on
It was
Sunset.
the same building.
Because they got a two-separate platform. Because during 2 nights a week, it was an exercise studio also. Mary Scanlon, yeah. Oh,
No,
yeah.
no,
Dentist, I think.
not what she's talking about.
Where was, so what, is that building gone or is it the
No,
dance
it's
studio?
just the dance studio.
So now it's a dance studio.
Yeah, there's two, right, the dance studio and then a doctor.
Yeah, so I
Oh, there is a foot doctor
one of
there,
those.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, the rest is on the.
Yeah.
And the post office before was the red brick building was by J.C. Sunbrox was the corner, and then the eastern part of that building was the post office.
Do you remember Mabel that worked at the post office?
Yes,
Yeah, I do.
Mabel?
I
Yes,
remember.
yes, yes.
Wait, where is the post office?
it was where J.C.'s owns it now. It was they added on top of it for living quarters, but it was like an L-shaped building there.
Mexican restaurant?
J.C.'s Mexican restaurant on the corner.
Right on the corner.
But that was
You go over the trash.
Humrock, that was Humrock. And then the one-story part was
Yeah, I
the,
remember that.
it became a John Deere implement company after that.
They had the hardware store in there, didn't they?
No, hardware
that's
store.
right.
Yeah,
further
but
back.
down that- in that-
TL, that was
Yeah.
TL.
Okay, we've really been here a long time.
Thank you all. I'm gonna just stop the video, but you can keep talking.
Village.
Okay.
Right.